Seasons of breakthrough, my seasons of trial. So I will seek you, and you I will find. You're my strong tower, and you.
Jamaica, make we do the right thing. Make we live good today for a better tomorrow. Talk it out. Don't fight it out. The time by the Ministry of National Security is
6:30.
When political analysts want to sound smart, they say, oh, the undecideds will decide a general election or a local election. And although it may seem trite and a bit intellectually lazy, the fact is that the concept of the undecided voter is a very fascinating one. Well, academics have put their mind to it to answer the question, who is the undecided voter? And I have the pleasure of speaking with one of the researchers on the program this evening. Lead Story T Friday edition, they ask, George, why do you look at your watch? I don't know, maybe it's because it's mine. It's time to start the show. I must confess that whenever I'm doing an interview and a political commentator comes on and in a particular election and they say, you know, it's the undecided, George, that will decide the vote. I said, geez, here we go again. And my eyes start rolling and I start fuming because I'm saying that is so obvious to say that it is so lazy. But as I said in the opening, the undecided voter, very interesting. What is or who is the undecided voter? What motivates them to declare themselves as such? Is an undecided voter a permanent state? Is it temporary? What are the things that move you from that designation, that self-designation? And is it a self-designation, or is it that someone who describes the kind of voter they are get designated as? A lot of questions to ask. Dr. Stephen Johnson, he's a researcher at the Sir Arthur Institute of Social and Economic Studies at the UWI Mona campus, has given me some of his time on this Friday evening to assist you all in understanding who is and what is the undecided voter. Dr. Johnson, good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
And how are you? And how are you today?
I'm going to be honest, a bit tired, but I'm okay. How are you?
Which is why I'm gracious for you giving me your time. I know it's been a long week. All right, let's get cracking, Dr. Johnson. The undecided voter, by definition, what is it?
I heard you earlier mentioning your questioning who they are in terms of persons who are in a permanent state of refraining from the poll. But an undecided voter is a voter who at the point in time when they're supposed to cast their ballot, they are not stimulated by any of the offerings, because naturally voters are rational actors. So if it is that they are not wooed or ordered, maybe they're engaging in revenge, so to speak, based on what would have transpired in the past, they're not inspired to cast their ballots. So they're inspired to stay home.
Oh, okay, all right. And in terms of, you say when they are not wooed. So in an environment where political parties or individual candidates then representing political parties are sending messages in, well, not scattergun because it was to just careless, but they're sending mass messages to a broad audience, an audience which includes those registered and eligible to vote. In that kind of context, when you say the undecided voter remains undecided because they don't feel as if they're being wooed, what is it about the messages that are being communicated that makes them ignore the messages and still hold on to the feeling that, look, you're speaking to people, but you're not speaking to me directly, and until and unless you speak to me directly, then I have no decision to make where your candidacy is concerned?
Well, what is unique about our democracy is that we have two major political parties, and both of them predominantly speak to their base. And when you cater to your base, it's what I would refer to as a low-hanging fruit, because you can almost count on them to come out. It takes extra effort and might be extra resources to try and reach the undecided voters to cast in it too widely. So you go with what is sure. So maybe that is one of the reasons why. And we were asking ourselves this question, and this is why we went out to get a sense of who is the undecided voter and try to create a profile of who these persons are. And most importantly, what would stimulate these persons to cast their ballot.
And of course, I don't want to be classified as a bad interviewer, so let me ask you the obvious questions, Dr. Johnson. What's the size of the sample you used and the profile of the individuals who participated in the study, and over what period did you conduct the study?
Okay, so we conducted the study over a 2-year period. We started out initially with a focus group to get different demographics, in a sense, to feel them to get a sense of what would stimulate them to vote rather than making the assumption. Because usually when you go to the survey, you already have the responses and the categories for them to respond to. So we didn't want to make any assumptions. So we started out qualitatively. And by interviewing persons, then we built an instrument and we targeted a representative sample. We targeted persons who would not have voted in the last 3 elections. The larger portion would have gone to the last election. Of course, they would have had to be eligible, right? So we would have casted the undecided, and then we would have extended it. I think overall we could have collected 1,500 with, I think, 68%, I believe, or 67% would have been persons who are undecided voters inside that sample.
Hear you on that. Hold the line for us, Dr. Johnson, taking our first break. This is Lead Story Friday edition here on CVM TV, talking about the undecided voter.
With Sangsters is back to school. Spend $5,000 or more at any of our stores. Get a golden ticket, scratch it off, and win. The grand prize is a shopping spree valued at $150,000 at PriceSmart, or a JPS gift voucher valued at $150,000. Plus, 12 branch winners will get $10,000 digital gift card. See the press or visit our website for details. Conditions apply. Authorized under Section 58(3) of the Betting, Gaming and Lotteries Act.
Everybody, I'm Yendi, and this is Odyssey with Yendi. In this space, we connect with some of your favorite people as they share their journeys. Here we have some unfiltered conversations as we deep dive into their inspirations, motivations, and experiences to inspire our own life journey.
Odyssey with Yendi. Brought to you by Grace, singer and Islander.
Dr. Stephen Johnson is a researcher at the Sir Arthur Institute of Social Economic Studies at the UWI Mona, and he is talking to me about who is the undecided voter, a piece of work that he would have completed alongside Professor Lloyd Waller, looking at that very crucial demographic. Dr. Johnson, let's talk profiles now. How does the typical undecided voter present himself or herself in terms of age, demographic, gender, and the like?
Well, the undecided voter, you would, of course, predominantly be Gen Zers, or first-time voters, as long as the larger pool who are not affiliated with a political party would, of course, be the millennial. In terms of, they would be in the lower income threshold in terms of earning. In terms of level of education, low skill, educated at the secondary level. In terms of housing, around 50% of them would have home ownership or have access to quality housing, so to speak. So age, in a sense, they're younger, and what you would say they're educated to the high school level, and they're lower income earners, mid to lower income earners.
So then what assumptions could safely be drawn from the profile of the average undecided voter, you would say?
I will go a bit further than just the profile to look at. We also did an ideological mapping, something that is often overlooked. Because in the US, we talk about left and right, but here in Jamaica, we actually did a profile of that.
Yes.
And what you will find is that the undecided voter, like all other voters, I can't really distinguish an undecided voter from a voter, in a sense, because all of them are to the left in terms of their ideology. All
Yes.
of them want social welfare. So I think if we were to look at that ideological map, you don't see any distinction between a voter who is a PMP, a voter who is a GLP, somebody who votes in terms of age and in terms of being an undecided voter. They are all on the left because they're looking for welfareism. What seems to be happening is that for some who are more, what you would say now, aligned to a political party, they are more inclined to vote irrespective of what is being offered. Whereas for others, they would want something, I guess, which is more unique to them. And I think we would have captured some of these indicators and would have ranked them accordingly. So there is no core distinction between the undecided, the voter, and political affiliation, just to make that clear.
Yes. All right. So among the undecideds then, what does the research say about persons who say, well, you know, I'm a Labourite at heart, but right now I'm undecided. And for the last 2 elections, I'm not sure. But if you ask me, if you push me, I'm a Labourite. Or I'm a comrade at heart, but for the last 2 elections and right now I'm undecided. What does the research say about the number of those and the comparison?
You will find that you would have, I think, more persons who are in the PMP or who indicated that they are affiliated with the PMP. I think it's 21% compared to 16% JLP who indicated that they are undecided. But the bulk of these persons, and it's not unsurprising, they are not they're declared that they are not affiliated with a political party.
Yes.
And I think this is over 60% of the respondents. So in a sense, they're in a state of apathy that they don't align with any of the 2 political parties. In a sense, they're not doing anything for me or anything that would stimulate me to go to the polls.
Yes. All right. But so let me ask you this then. In a democratic system or in a democracy such as let me use the UK as an example, where you know you have the big 2, the Conservatives, you have Labour, you have the Lib Dems, you have the SNP, the Scottish National Party. You will have, let's go to you have Sinn Féin as an extreme. You have the Greens. You will have other smaller parties, a multiplicity of parties in an election. Is it that the undecided voter may be different in form from an undecided voter in the Jamaican context, given that we have 2 behemoths, 2 large parties dominating our political space without a viable option to either of those 2? Unlike the UK example, where the big 2, there is a bunch of other parties around them. Reform has now emerged as a very strong threat to the Labour Party's hold on governance. So answer that for me.
So larger democracy in terms of electorates, a larger number of political parties, so there's at least something for everyone. And what was unique about it, because I would have experienced it as well in voting in their 2 elections, is they would have had a website where it compares all, or you go and you select a profile, and it tells you who you're closest with. Within our political context, and this is why, again, I draw on the ideological map. We also map that to get a sense if there are any differences. And as you can see, all of them are on the left. One is, I think, Social Democrat, and another is Democratic Socialist. But they're all on the left. So there is no difference, even the undecided. They all want the same thing. And what they want is welfareism. Whereas in the UK, I guess a number of other, several other items or policies would be on the menu. And you know, of course, you will find something for yourself. And not surprisingly, the voter turnout is larger and the undecided voter segment or portion is smaller. So within our context, though, the undecided is larger, right? Because when they're looking at both of the political parties, I guess they're not seeing something that they would want. And we also seek to capture what they would want, and we put it out there, and hopefully, I guess either political parties, because this was presented to them, both see it and try as best as possible to capture something from it to stimulate the undecided base, to get as much of them coming off the fence on their side.
Hear you on that. Hold the point right there, Dr. Johnson. We'll have to take a break and come right back. This is Lead Story on CVM TV, learning about the profile of the undecided voter, what makes someone undecided, and of course doing a comparison between democracies that are larger than ours with more political offerings and ours, where the main course is either orange or green.
Jamaica is paving the way to becoming a republic or future or choice. The time by the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs is
6:45.
From politics to global events, from social issues to breaking news, Lead Story Prime dives deeper, cuts through the noise, and uncovers the stories that shape your world. Join us every Tuesday at 8 p.m. for Lead Story Prime with me, George Davis, for an hour of incisive analysis, expert interviews, and unparalleled coverage of the issues you care about. Lead Story Prime, your front row seat to the most compelling discussions. Lead Story Prime, where the truth comes first. Only on CVM TV.
Join us next week when we conclude our discussion on the role the GTRC continues to play in building resilience in the global tourism sector.
Question, who is the undecided voter? Well, researchers have put their smarts to understanding that Dr. Stephen Johnson of the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of Social and Economic Studies at the UWI Mona is one of them, and we are well into our discussion. So therefore, Dr. Johnson, based on what you found, then the obvious question is this: how does this understanding, based on the research, influence political messaging or the different phases that a campaign goes through, launched by a political organization to woo as many people into its broad church as is possible?
Sorry, what is the question?
Oh, you didn't hear it? I'm saying, how does the research, based on the findings, how does it then inform how a political party or a candidate tailors its messaging to reach that person who is designated as undecided?
Okay, so of course you would have to understand the profile of who these persons are, and most importantly in terms of their needs, because oftentimes than not, when persons are targeting the undecided, you hear that you should vote because Jamaica fought for universal adult suffrage, and voting is a privilege, right? But very few, even with political polls, when we're doing polls, we just ask the persons who indicate who indicate that they're going to vote, who you're going to vote for. But emphasis is not placed on what do they want or even their ideology. And in this case, we asked them what they want, and they told us. Some of these policies exist already, of course, but some of them, like for example, I'm going to tell you one that jumped out at me. What some of them want a subsidy for childcare once they're employed. Right? And already we hear that our population is declining and persons are saying have more children. But they keep pressuring and having more children. But what are the incentives that are being offered?
Yes.
But here you have on the list one, a pocket of undecided voters are saying, hey, give us some incentives for childcare, and maybe they will consider. And then there's the issue of housing as a social right and not necessarily an investment tool. So housing, I've seen the different political parties. They are, of course, trying to address that. So, of course, I guess they will collect some pockets of the voters. But you see efforts underground. But I have to tell you the most salient one for me. Of course, the regular is on the list. The corruption, access to path and continuation of free healthcare, etc., etc. Right? But those two, they really jumped out at me.
You know, and I can't help but think as we look at the messaging aspect of it. The larger democracies, and I go back to the UK example again, Dr. Johnson, that you will have a society where one party says, listen, it is all about the environment. So the Green Party talks about cutting down carbon footprint, which none of the mainstream parties, any political party in Jamaica serious about office can't have primary on its manifesto environmental issues, because people say you're not dealing with the real issues because environment is not important. But for many people, the environment is important to them, and if the party is not talking about that, then they are disinterested and they will be filed under the heading undecided. So am I getting used to say that some of these issues that in our society we see as the soft issues, which the parties then don't pay attention to, if these issues were prominent, more people would not be undecided.
That is correct, but at the same time, the parties, you have to understand, they have to go with the bread and butter issues, like the sure issues that will get persons out. And if you really look at even how they're campaigning now, they're really trying to touch bread and butter issues, such as not taxing overtime, such as housing, water, roads, etc., healthcare. So they have to go for those salient points before, and then without spreading the resources. But one thing I want us not to overlook, and something that jumps out at me, is I want to also look at the electorates and for them to have an understanding of, in a sense, how government works. Because as you can see, the majority, irrespective of voter or non-voter, they want welfareism. But George, welfareism comes with taxation.
Yes.
But we shun taxation.
Yes.
And majority, that's why they're so far under, because they shun taxation. Now, political parties are in a dilemma because the more you promise and the more you expand, and in order for you to do, certain policies or even do certain tax write-offs to incentivize voters, the money has to come from somewhere.
Yes.
And oftentimes than that, it's taxation.
Yes.
And we see where welfareism work, for example, in the Scandinavian countries, and they have very high voter turnout,
yes.
but they also have very high taxation.
Yes.
And the majority of their labor force is in the formal employment sector.
Yes.
Our reality is different here. So I even will go as far as to sympathize with the political parties in trying to woo undecided voters. But for me, that's where the clock is. And once you're able to pull that. But I don't think any of our political parties are going to be brave enough to say we're going to increase taxation. We are really having the opposite here. But in order to have these goodies and welfareism rolling out and have something for everyone, you have to charge more.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Why do you think then, based on all that you've researched, the number of undecided voters, well, clearly from the turnout at elections, the voter turnout is dwindling. But look at this. 1944 universal adult suffrage. A lot more of the population were able to participate in the voting process, especially men and women who were illiterate, which is how the symbols came, because man couldn't read Stephen Johnson's name on a paper, but they said Stephen Johnson is represented by the X, so you put your X beside the X. So 44 forward, the universal adult suffrage and new people buying in, so voter turnout high. Or after 1962, independence, so the feeling of nationhood, voter turnout reasonably good. 1980, record high, but we know the violence, unprecedented in an election. But as the years have gone on and the violence has left the electoral process largely, and Jamaica's democracy is not a shiny new thing anymore, and we're way removed from universal adult suffrage, voter participation is declining. What, if anything, can be drawn from how I've painted the continuum?
I would call it prolonged disappointment, because, you would speak to persons who said that they would vote, like, for example, in 3 or 4 elections, and they're not voting anymore. And let me give you a quick example, because I know I'm aware of your time constraint. For example, voters' expectations are sometimes not aligned with reality. For example, let's use water. And the campaign trail, we hear it a lot, something like promising water. I say, yes, I'm going to vote for you because you promised me water. Lo and behold, when it comes time to get water on my property, Judge, I realize that in order to get water, I have to be paying taxes. But I don't have a land title.
Yes.
And because I don't have a land title, I can't get the water, and it comes by my gate and it stops.
Yes.
I'm going to be disappointed. And next election, I'm not voting for you because guess what? You promised me water. You understand? Yes. Whereas if you had been more direct and say, okay, in order to get the water, here's what you have to do. You have to be paying property taxes, or you get your title and the lamp. But I don't really see anybody doing that. So they are building up expectations. And then you're going to have disappointment, and then persons are going to withdraw because I say, I voted for you the last time for the water, and I didn't get it, right? And in a sense, that's unfair, but that's on your own doing, and it's out of ignorance.
Yes, yes, indeed. And
one silly example. So it's something like that you see happening, an unkept promise. When you ask them, even a focus group, they will tell you, I voted already, but I didn't get this, or I didn't get that.
And you are correct, because
of the overpromise and the underdelivery.
Yeah, because in a room where Jamaicans are gathered, shouting important issues to them at the political representatives, the man or woman who says constitutional reform or fixed election dates is going to be shouted down like, Come on, man, we talk about crime and economy and education and school and agriculture. You come with this nonsense about fixed election dates and constitutional reform. And that represents, while not a sizable majority, Dr. Johnson, you would admit that there are many people who feel that these issues are important. And if you stifle their voice, they will say, well, the electoral process has nothing for me. It has nothing for me, so I'm not participating. Right?
And then on the side of the MPs too, is a discussion and something I'm working on, is the size of the constituencies.
Yes.
When you look at a rural constituency and you're getting the same money under the CDF.
Yes.
And you look at a Kingston constituency, which is like maybe 20% of the rural constituency. It's disproportionate, but they're getting the same amount of money to fix the same roads.
Yes.
One is going to be left with a shorter stick and he's going to get the bashing and say never fix any road around here.
That's right.
And that's why the road remains like that for years.
Yes.
But in a urban constituency, it's the road, you would have the resources to fix that.
Yeah. Yeah, and the point is the resource allocation constituency by constituency cannot be egalitarian.
So there are several different issues that you can point and why this person stay away and why we cannot get it to click,
Just that. Dr. Johnson, I want to thank you for your time. My producer is in my ear telling me time is up. Really appreciate you on this Friday, and all the best. So job well done, and I'll read and commit the paper to my friends.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Dr. Stephen Johnson, researcher, Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of Social and Economic Studies at the UWI Mona. That's my time. That's the week. Goodbye.